little scared when I hear laughing going on behind me. I don't know if it's me or you or what's happening. And I was resisting the urge to turn around and see what in the world was going on. I want to look at a passage right now from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19. It's a familiar story, but sometimes it's those familiar stories that kind of trip us up. And sometimes the details are really, really important. Because they're so familiar, we gloss over some of them. This is the story of the rich young ruler. Matthew chapter 19, I'm beginning with verse 16. Now a man came up to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" "Well, why do you ask me about what is good?" Jesus asked. "There's only one who's good. If you want to enter life, obey the commandments." "Which ones?" the man inquired. Jesus replied, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false witness, honor your father and mother, love your neighbor as yourself." "I've kept all of these," the young man said. "What do I still lack?" Jesus answered, "Well, if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." But when the man heard this, he went away sad, because he had great wealth. As I said, it's a familiar story, one that we've heard a lot. We've read that many times, and you probably heard that from countless stewardship sermon campaigns at the beginning. But I'm going to look a little, hopefully maybe a little deeper at some of this today. Here was a young man. When you add what's told in Luke, we put it all together. We see that he was rich, he was young, and he was a ruler. So we put it all together in one. Here's what we can kind of surmise. This was a respectable man. This was a man who wanted to do right. I don't know exactly what his motivations were. We'll never know that. But clearly he wanted to do the right thing. He said, I've been keeping all the commandments. I've been trying to do what everyone says I'm supposed to do. And yet clearly somewhere deep within him, he knew something was missing. He just wasn't quite fulfilled. And so he went up to Jesus, said, "Master, what is it I still lack? What am I missing here?" Jesus had an answer for him, but ultimately it was probably not what he was expecting to hear. If you notice, Jesus at first mentioned 5 commandments. You might have expected he would just gone on and add the other 5 commandments to it as well, but the answer would have been the same. I suspect the man would have still said, "I'm doing all that. What's lacking?" And so that's when Jesus kind of hit him with what had to have felt like a bombshell. Well, if you really want to be perfect, if you really want to be obedient to God, if you really want to be righteous and do the right thing, go and sell everything you've got and give it all to the poor. But don't worry. Don't worry. Because you're going to receive treasure from heaven. And then when you've done that, come and follow me. Now let's be honest about something a minute. If that was a blanket statement by Jesus to anyone who wants to be perfect with God, most of us, maybe all of us, are in trouble, right? If that story was in the Bible because it's a blanket statement, and anybody who wants to follow God, anyone who wants to be righteous, everyone who wants to be perfect, we all need to sell our possessions, give them to the poor. Well, I suspect it wouldn't just be that young man who'd have trouble. I suspect most all of us would have trouble with that. Here's the thing. If that was meant to be a blanket statement, why is that the only place we hear it in the gospel stories? Why is this man the only one Jesus says that to? He's talking to a lot of people. He's calling throughout the gospels many people to a deeper faith. In this one case, he says, you need to get rid of everything you've got and give it to the poor. But he didn't say it to everyone. Here's what he did expect of everyone. Jesus is consistent with everyone that they put God first. But he's wiser than we are. He knows one size doesn't fit all, one set of instructions isn't going to work for everyone. There are different things holding us back. And so in this case, he looked at that young man. He looked at a man who was trying to do right. He was following everything that the rabbis were saying he was supposed to do. He was doing all the commandments. Moses would be happy with him. Why did he have a sense that God wasn't? And Jesus looked. Jesus, our great brother, Jesus, the one who knows our heart. And he saw what he sees so often, that man wasn't putting God first. And so he went right to the heart of the issue for that young man. He said, well, here's what you need to do. Others might have to do something else, but you put your possessions in front of God. Your hope, your trust, it's really in your stuff. It's in your things. And so if you really want to get it right, if you want to be rich, if you want to have treasure that comes from God, in fact, if you want to walk closely with me, let go of that stuff that's causing the problem. You need to get rid of that. You need to sell it. You need to give it to the poor. Use what God has given you for something really good, something bigger than you. But listen, when you do, you're going to be blessed in a way you didn't know before. When you do, you're going to receive what you've been looking for. When you do, you're going to find that you aren't lacking at all. For God's going to fill you up with heavenly treasure. Those words probably could have been spoken to any of us. But the truth is, maybe in our culture more than many, we're a lot like that rich young ruler. As I've gotten to know you, I come confident Sunday after Sunday that those of you who are coming regularly, those I've gotten to know, you're trying to be good, you're trying to be righteous. I really do believe you want to follow God. So do I, by the way. We're trying to do the right things. We know we're not perfect, but I would suspect we're trying to follow those commandments. And yet I also know that sometimes there's that sense that we have too, that something's lacking. That there's got to be a little more than just doing the right thing. And if we really are honest, it has a lot to do not with doing, but with giving. Have we given ourselves to God? Is God first? It's awfully easy, isn't it? To let things take over. To let things become most important. I don't know if God's calling anyone here to give up everything to the poor, but I do know that God's calling every single one of us to put Him first. And if you dare stand before the God who knows you and dare to ask that question, what is it I still lack? God will take you right to that place where you're holding back. God will take you right to that place in your life where you're really not giving completely to God. And He'll say, step out in faith. Step out. So here's a young man. He wants so much. He wants more than he has. Jesus tells him what he needs to do, but it's too much. So the story ends. And with that he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. I suppose if it had been just a couple of quarters, that would have been a little different, right? But to give your all, to give everything you got to God, that's pretty tough, isn't it? Jesus had something else to say about this once earlier in his ministry. I don't know how, maybe a year earlier, but in Matthew chapter 6, right at the heart of the Sermon on the Mount, he had these words to say, wherever your treasure is, there your heart and your thoughts will be as well. Listen, just you can write this down, capture this in your thoughts, remember this. Whatever you consider to be your treasure is going to capture your heart. Whatever you consider to be your treasure will capture your heart. For the Christian, shouldn't that something be God? Shouldn't God be your treasure? Think of what will happen when we learn to give ourselves fully and completely to God. Now here's where Jeff has the tough time. He's got to talk about a budget. I get to expand that a little bit. I get to talk about a kingdom. He has to talk about a building fund. I get to talk about God. He's talking, but we're both saying the same sorts of thing. He's given you an opportunity to be part of a kingdom by supporting the ministries of the church. We understand budgets are money, and money undergirds the ministries that are going to take place in the coming year. We get that. What I want us to see is that even that's not enough. You could increase by a percentage, you could increase by a dollar amount, you could increase and still end up standing like that young man before Jesus saying, what is it I still lack? I'm doing everything the preacher tells me to do. I'm doing everything the finance chair tells you to do. I'm giving more than I've ever given before, and there's still something missing. And I suspect that even then, Jesus would say, oh, you're so close, but I want you to do even more. And then he'd tell you what it is. This is a hard parable for us, because it really does begin to hit hard on us. I want to give you one more parable that's even harder. This one's a tough one. I'm going to share it with you. This actually came just a little bit after Jesus had encountered this young ruler. So that happens in chapter 19. This is going to happen a little bit further on in Matthew chapter 25. Jesus told a story about a man, a landowner who was preparing to go off for a long trip. And as part of his preparations, he took his 3 trusted servants, and he gave them various amounts of money. You kind of remember this story. He gave them various amounts of money depending on their level of skill, their ability. So to one he gave 5 bags of gold, to one he gave 2 bags, to one he gave 1 bag of gold. And he gave the same instructions to each of them, though. He said, I want you to take care of this. I want you to use it well. I want you to invest it properly. I want you to watch over it so that it's there when I come back. You need to be a good steward of what I am giving you. And then he took off. The servant with the 5 bags, of course, the story is he invested his gold, and soon enough he had 10 bags of gold. The guy who had 2 bags invested it, soon enough he had 4 bags of gold. The guy with the 1 bag said, no, there's a reason I got 1 bag and not 10. I'm not real good at this. I don't know all these fancy things, but I know how to dig a hole in the ground, so I'm just going to make sure I don't have to worry about inflation, deflation. I don't have to worry about interest. I don't have to worry about anything. I'm just going to dig a hole, and it's going to be right there. Now understand, he wasn't being dishonest. This guy wasn't being deceitful. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He was in essence kind of doing what the man had told him to do, but he put it there. And so when the owner came back, he called his 3 servants and he asked an account, and he was really pretty pleased with the first 2. Said, you've done a great job. You've doubled what I've given you. I'm gonna increase your responsibility. Now that may sound like something you don't want, but listen, it was increasing their joy. It was increasing their chance to be part of the master's life. When it came to the one servant, he wasn't quite so happy at all. He said, you've been lazy. You've been foolish. His wrath was poured out on this poor man for just digging a hole. He said the least you could have done was invest it. You could have earned a little interest. You could have done something better than this. But because you played it safe, because you're watching over yourself more than anything else, I'm going to take even what little you have and I'm going to give it to this guy who had the 10. Didn't say this, but I suspect the owner said, you move on. You go somewhere else. Now that was the story. I want you to hear what Jesus said about that story. See, that's a parable. There was a point to it, and it's the point that we often don't listen to carefully enough. He said, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who are unfaithful, even what little they have will be taken away. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Jesus at that moment wasn't thinking about that rich young ruler who some months before had come to him and walked away sad and unwilling to do anything. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who are unfaithful, and that's the ouch in this story. That's where it gets really hard to hear. Not for those who are lazy, not for those who tried but didn't know, not for those who didn't give their best, but for those who are unfaithful. Even what they have will be taken away. There's a clear implication here when we're willing to acknowledge it. Just as giving our all and putting God first is a clear sign of faithfulness, not giving our all, not putting God first, in Jesus' mind, is a clear sign of unfaithfulness. Friends, I don't want to be unfaithful. I don't want to stand before Jesus someday and realize that I walked away time and time again unfulfilled and sad. I want to put God first. I want to give my life for Him. I want to use what God has entrusted me to the very best of my ability. And selfishly, I want that peace. I want that joy. I want to know that my Master has rewarded me with even greater responsibility. Jeff's told us what we've got to do in the next couple of weeks. You can read the material. One thing I don't want you to do, don't throw that letter away. Don't leave it unopened. Pay attention to it. Spend time in prayer in these next couple of weeks. We are stewards of the gifts and graces God has given to us. I'm going to ask the band to come back up for our closing song. As they're coming back, I just want us to have a moment of prayer, thanking God for not only for what God has given to us, but for the privilege and the opportunity we have to be those tremendous stewards of God's blessings. Or what a blessing it is to be part of your kingdom. To use what you've given us for something bigger than us. What a blessing, God, it is to be part of your kingdom. Lord, I pray that you'll guide us in the days, weeks to come, that we may truly know what it is to give ourselves completely to you, that you'll be first in our life. So we give you our thanks and praise as we give ourselves to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's stand.
We come with expectation. still you know my heart, the author of salvation. You've loved us from the start. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise. It's you we adore, singing you are everything you've promised. Faithfulness is true. We're desperate for your presence. All we need is you. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise. And it's you we adore, singing wait for you, Lord. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise. And it's you we adore, singing with our hands lifted high in praise. And it's you we adore, singing hallelujah.
the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, go in peace. Amen.